Hi, welcome to this week's CS on Air. Today we've got Webmaster Rupert Brayoni with us. Rupert is originally a marine biologist, but he's been passionate about web design for many years, and he's been with Google for 5 years now of designing web pages. Some of you may know him for the Santa Tracker. That's the application that has Santa flying around Google Earth delivering the presents on Christmas Eve. But today he's here in his capacity as Google Webmaster. So I'll now hand over to Rupert, also known as Santa. Thanks very much.
Santa's helper. I think I've got a promotion there, but thank you, Alison. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Just to kind of reiterate, we're calling this module Speeding Up Website Development with Industry Best Practice. And I wanted to shed a bit of insight into how Google approaches these things, and with lots of examples. And one of my favorite thing, and slightly scary, a bit of live coding. So I think the first half, we're going to look at some good resources that I and a lot of other webmasters use on a daily basis. And the second half, I'll show you actually putting some of this into practice and how easy it can be to make a website that does kind of conform to industry first practice. But the first thing I want to do actually is just go through, and I'm going to share my screen with you and show a few things that I find quite inspiring. So I'm hoping quite a few of you will recognize this site. This was the winning website from the Junior Swiss Web Awards this year, and it was just phenomenal. And it starts with this really lovely little opening thing. We've got a light switch up the top here. Click, and the lights come on. And I would describe that as something quite googly already. That's a very delightful feature. This was a site that won because it did an awful lot of what we love about web design very, very well indeed. And in fact, if you didn't know this was just a school project, you would think this was somebody who'd spent a lot of money and a lot of time putting this together. The time, I know, is true. The money, maybe not so much, but it's a terrific resource. My French isn't what it could be, so I am going to use Google Chrome to translate, and that makes my life a little easier. But you can kind of see we've got a lovely looking site here.
No, we've just lost Rupert, but I think he'll be back any second.
All right, sorry about that. I think I may have lost you for a minute there.
Back.
When did I cut out? At what point?
Just when you were saying what a lovely site it was.
Okay. All right, let me try that again. I'll do the screen share. Back to the window. So I hope you can see this again. It was just a terrific site all round, and it did stick with a lot of what we consider as googly principles, which I'd like to outline some of you. I think that the core thing I'd say, rather than a technical aspect, it's the content, and that's what we love at Google, just good, solid content. And if I look here, I'm actually in the market for lights at the moment. Just this whole fantastic thing of comparing various light bulbs. This is really useful for me, and this is something I have actually used when I'm choosing light bulbs myself just now. It just does lots and lots of wonderful things. So we're going to kind of build this around a recent blog post, well, a couple of years blog post again, and we have some interesting points here. I'd just like to kind of convey how we sort of attempt to use this in our websites at Google. So first and foremost, the language is a little bit flowery, but I think it bears repeating. Focus on people, their lives, their work, their dreams. So I think that the take-home point about this is you're not designing a website for yourself. You're designing it for the people that wish to engage with your content. All of these notes are actually in the show notes. So what I'll maybe do is just go back to a headshot and then walk through the rest of these with you. So don't worry, you'll have links to all of this material and you can read up on it yourself. So yeah, so design it for the users of the content, not for you, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to reward all your hard work with, well, their time or their money, depending on what kind of site you're running. The second one is It's another very important one for us. Every millisecond counts. So that's not just time is important, but your user's time is important. We're talking about it in milliseconds, thousandths of a second. And a lot of Google engineers spend a lot of time just shaving these tiny percentages of seconds off. Because when you have a website that responds quickly, it just feels snappier. You spend more time on it. It's a more enjoyable experience. And importantly, you get to your content quicker. Simplicity, always a good thing. There's plenty of distractions in the world as it is, and we don't need our websites to be another one of these things. So as they say, make it as simple as you can and no simpler. Don't feel you have to throw a lot of design or interactions or content that might be extraneous. Just keep it to the bare minimum, and then your material is easier to navigate around. I think this one is maybe slightly more related to products. So for something like Gmail, one of our, well, I think everybody knows our webmail product. It's easy for beginners. You can just hit lots of nice colorful buttons to do the reply and the forward and things like this. But what do we mean by attract experts? Well, the expert mode for something like Gmail is you can switch on keyboard shortcuts. So if you want to get really heavy duty into you know, a slightly more elaborate experience, there's all sorts of layers of complexity you can turn on, but it's off by default when you start, and so it's easy for the beginners to get to grips with it. Innovate, I'd probably suggest another great example of this is something like Google Maps, because before Google Maps came along, the idea of an online mapping service just was a static map, just as a giant graphic. And what would happen, if you wanted to move to the right and see what was in the east, you had to click a button and the page would reload and it would just recenter this big image that was your main map area, which seems prehistoric now, but that was just how it was done. So when we had this idea of a live scrolling map that you could interact with, just that dynamic element, it just was phenomenal. I mean, I didn't work for Google when this came out, and I was just amazed. I mean, I absolutely loved this. Design for the world. If I related this to what we do at Google, I'd say we'd be looking at something like language support. So what we try and do with all our major products, we'll launch in potentially 40 different languages. And so we don't expect everybody to read English. If you want to read it in Hindi or Philippines, is that Tagalog? I think the name of that is different now. There's all sorts of languages and the most amazing fonts and scripts available. But remember that your audience, with the nature of the web as it is, could be outside of your home country. And if your content is good, one hopes it would go worldwide as well. Plan for today's and tomorrow's business. I'm going to have to mull that one over a little more. I'm going to reinterpret that one as be future-proof. So sometimes what you find is you start a website one way, you find the feedback you get from users is a little bit different. So bear that in mind, and you can change the direction as you go according to feedback. Delight the eye without distracting the mind. This is, again, I would say this is avoiding design for design's sake, and actually only put these visual elements in if they convey extra information or they make the user interface easier to get around. So that one's can be open to interpretation as well. Be worthy of people's trust. Well, that's an important one. If you're going to gather data, make sure you tell them what the usage conditions are. One hopes you're not selling details on to third parties, whatever, and users will want to trust you. So make that very clear and stick to that. So just be very open about what you do with people's information, and then people will trust you and reward you by coming back to your website. And then the final element, and this is a fun one, we have something called add a human touch. You've probably heard of Easter eggs. Occasionally, I think one of my favorite examples is the Android phone Android character, this little green character, and he crops up in a few of our websites. He does nice little animated things. He's a real character, and I'm very fond of him. But I'll show you a quick example. Go back to share screen. I don't know how many of you are familiar with some of these Google Easter eggs, but the classic one, if you go to google.com, do a barrel. Oh, there we go, straight off. So this is an old video game reference. I guess it's one of these meme things. When you search for this phrase, do a barrel roll, you get exactly this. Oh, too late, I think. But you saw the screen spin around, I think. So somebody just had an afternoon doing some fun coding and get this amazing special effect, which is fun. So occasionally you can do something a little bit silly, but it just gives everybody a smile and makes your website a little bit more unexpected and exciting. So what I'll do now, I'm going to go through some of the resources that we use when we're planning a website. And these are all things that are publicly available and you can use yourselves. And it never hurts to see some of the good stuff that other people create. I'd always suggest that there's plenty of inspiration out there, and don't be shy of borrowing some of what's out here. If you want to read a little bit more about some of the Google principles, again, there's links to this in the notes. We just have some observations on how people interact with technology in our websites. This will be in the notes, but let's go to some design inspiration. So it's very rare that you'll sit down and just start coding a site. What's probably going to happen is you can have the situation where you have a rough idea of the content, or rather one would hope you would have a very good idea of the content, because the content always comes first. But then you need some angles, some kind of nice visuals, some color schemes. You don't have to copy anything here, but this is a site I quite like. This is something called Pattern Tap, and people submit their own sites to this and just highlight when they have interesting elements. So if you're really struggling, say, with a form, and forms can be important because you might be requiring people to sign up for a product that you create. And if it's very difficult to find the submit button, well, that's not helping anybody. So here we've got a library. It looks like 460 different approaches to a form. And it just gives you this nice collection of screen shots. Wow, so MySpace is in here. So that's interesting. Looking at this graphic here, they're kind of broken away from this thing of just these white boxes in space. They have this nice kind of typographic treatment. It looks very modern. It's quite a nice one. Let's see what else we've got. We've got things like portfolios. It's a classic for the visual designers. There's all sorts of different types of designs you can do. This one jumps out already. That's lovely. We've got this nice diagonal thing going on. That's really cute. So I kind of think you can see this. And you can go through and zoom in on this stuff and look at the proper website. So it's a great place to go for inspiration. Like I say, you don't need to copy any of this. One hopes you don't, but it never hurts to kind of see what ideas are out there just now. Now this is one that I use quite a lot myself, and kind of particularly for my private projects. I struggle a little bit with colors sometimes. I don't have any classical training in art or graphic design, and so I can tell if there's a nice color palette on a site, and this is a lovely way of kind of getting some very soothing complementary colors, so you can choose a look and a feel and generate some of these palettes here. And this is something you can use. You've got every color has got a name. We've got a hex value up here, which if you're going to add colors in your CSS, that's the kind of key value there. Or you can just sample it if you're still creating mock-ups in Photoshop or something like this. But I'm a huge fan of this website, and I do it a lot for my sites outside of Google. We're a little more restricted internally with Google because we have our corporate colors. But I think it's terrific just to see some of these other ideas out there. And just dig through. I just come to visit for a couple of minutes and then stay for a long time because they have these gorgeous color schemes out here. It's a nice one too. So what else do I use for inspiration? Well, this is a collaboration tool. I hope everybody's heard of, well, it used to be called Google Docs. We call it Google Drive now. And this is a suite of applications. It includes things like word processing. You can have presentation, create presentations with this, spreadsheets, all sorts of things. In the old days, you used to have to download an Office package, and that would cost a lot of money. And this is basically free for anybody. And the beauty about this is it's collaborative. You can have one document. Lots of people can share it. You can be editing it in real time. There's a little diagram there with the users kind of interacting. And if you're actually working as part of a team, something like this is just phenomenally useful. So I would recommend everybody, you may actually already have it as part of your class, but yeah, get signed up to Google Drive, and this will save you a lot of hassle. And in fact, what I'm going to do is show you an example of a document right off the bat. So in the standard workflow, we've got an idea of the content we want to put together. What I would probably do is I would have put that into a Google Doc, specifically the word processing template, and I would work with my colleagues, make some edits. You can add comments, there's revision history, and then when we know roughly what the content is going to look like in the doc, and we would ask for sign-off, we get finalized content, we can be working simultaneously in something like this. This should be a lovely draw template, and this exists out there. There's actually some terrific resources that people have shared that, again, are free. Anybody can use. And this is just one I particularly like that was a web page mock-up generator. The idea for this is you're not looking to create the final look and feel of your website. It's just a way to get rough visuals together, but it can be very effective. So let me just show you how easy this is to edit. If I'm going to change this graphic, I'm not so sure I like that position in the blue bar. I don't want to have a carousel, I just want to have a single video. So all of this stuff is editable. And like I say, you can pass this on. You can block it out yourself, even if you're not a designer, but you can pass it on to a designer and then get more detailed feedback. So I'm actually going to take this visual element here and then resize it here. So this is an alternate approach I'm going to take. And then I can start blocking out content here. Ugh. Okay, you get the idea. I'm not quite double clicking in there. There we go. So it's a really quick way of putting roughs together. You don't have to be a designer to use this. Some of these better templates are available. Just have a search for them. Come with all sorts of useful elements. We've got multiple scroll bars. We've got buttons if you want to rough out a form. All sorts of little inputs and player devices. Things that would take you quite a while to recreate yourself in a graphics package. And again, these templates are just freely available, shareable, collaborative. So please make use of these. I hope you find them as useful as we do. And then I'm going to let you into a little bit of a secret here. You don't even have to know a lot of HTML. Something that's kind of come to light the last 4 or 5 years, this idea of frameworks. And a framework is, usually it's based around CSS. This is something that Twitter, that everybody knows about. They've shared something that they use on their own site, but they've created a version just for the general public. So if you want to kind of create a gridded layout very quickly, you can use it with whatever your text editor of choice. Now, I'll come back to this in a minute. We're going to do a 10-minute website. Hopefully I'll show you how quickly you can create these things. But this is a great website, some good resources, some examples of the site in use. And the best thing about it, to my mind, is it automatically adds this responsive design in, which you'll hear a lot of people talking about just now, which is basically supporting alternate layouts for mobile devices. So you're looking at mobile phones, tablets, smartphones, this kind of a thing. So we'll come back to this very briefly. Some more resources. This is actually one of ours. We've got a website called HTML5 Rocks. Some terrific stuff in here, some great examples. So again, you can spend hours looking through this. Please do. Some very good material. Something called Schema. If you're really into, this helps with things like search engines and marking up content correctly. It can get a little technical, but it's worth going through. So if you were doing a website about a person, you would kind of look through some of these references, and I think this it talks about microdata. This is a little more niche, but it's something that's worth being aware of. It's just the website isn't terribly pretty, but it's a good resource as well. JQuery, I guess, is what we call a JavaScript framework. This is a library that does a lot of very nice things that to be honest, would take you a lot of time to do if you had to code them yourself, and certainly for the cross-browser support. There's a few nice elements in here I'll show you. So rather than having to kind of create these from scratch, that draggable element, that's surprisingly complex to do yourself. You need quite a bit of JavaScript, and again, making it work on all the possible browsers. And using a library like JQuery, you can just have all that hard work done for you. This you probably recognize, what we call an accordion navigation. There's actually simpler ways to do this with CSS, but if you want full cross-browser support, again, you can't go wrong with a bit of jQuery. And then this is one of my favorites. This would be a nightmare to hand code yourself. You have a date picker. If I click in there, you can see it's already picked out the correct date, and just so simple. And that would take a day of engineering, easy, to have to create that from scratch. The idea that you can just pull that from a library is phenomenal, so I think you'll probably find that quite useful. A good resource for CSS, if you ever need to dig a little bit deeper. I love Illustrapart. It pretty much is where I learned nearly all of my CSS, particularly the responsive stuff. And so we have some terrific articles here, which again are very well written, and they always come with very good code examples. So again, this is something I would point you towards. And then when you've built your site, you want to see how it's performing, how people are interacting with it. I'm sure you've heard of Google Analytics. It gives you a terrific insight into how many people are visiting your page, but not just that, the pages are spending most time on, maybe pages they aren't finding. You can track goals, conversions. So if you have a sign-up page, if people aren't signing up to it, then maybe you can find out some reasons why with analytics. And then we also have, this isn't so much web design, this kind of helps you with interacting with our Google products and making sure that the Google search bot is indexing your site correctly. But there's this Google